My loft in TriBeCa was more than just an apartment. It was a testament to a life meticulously curated, a philosophy brought to tangible form. High ceilings, exposed bricks softened by carefully chosen art, light pouring through vast industrial windows. Every line, every texture, every piece of furniture had a purpose, a place. It reflected me, Ethan, the architect who found beauty and solace in structure, in order. At 42, I believed I had built a life as robust and elegant as my designs, a thriving career, a beautiful home, and a marriage to Clara that felt like the cornerstone of it all. She was vibrant, effervescent, a stark contrast to my sometimes staid nature, and I thought we balanced each other perfectly. Her laughter was the melody that filled the precise spaces I had designed. Our life felt complete, immutable. I met Clara at an opening for a gallery my firm had designed. She wasn't an artist, but a marketing executive, full of a boundless energy that both intrigued and slightly overwhelmed me. I, the quiet observer, found myself drawn into her orbit, her quick wit and infectious enthusiasm a refreshing counterpoint to the rigid lines of my world. Our courtship was a whirlwind, or at least, as much of a whirlwind as my methodical heart allowed. She saw the beauty in my precision, she said, admiring how I could bring form to an idea, how I saw the hidden geometry in everything. I, in turn, was fascinated by her fluidity, her ability to navigate social landscapes with an effortless grace I could only dream of. Our life together felt like a perfectly calibrated machine, two disparate parts meshing into a harmonious whole. Ben, my oldest friend since college, a fellow architect with a more bohemian bent, was often a part of our world. He and Clara developed an easy camaraderie, a shared sense of humor that sometimes left me feeling a step behind, but I dismissed it as their dynamic, nothing more. Looking back, the first tremors were imperceptible, like hairline cracks beneath a freshly painted wall. Clara would sometimes make decisions about our home, minor things, a new piece of art, a rearrangement of furniture, without consulting me, explaining it away with a shrug and a, "Oh, I knew you'd love it, darling. You're always so busy with work." And I usually did love it, so I never questioned it. Ben, too, started dropping by more often when I was at the office, his presence a constant hum in the background of my peripheral vision, but I attributed it to the ease of old friendship. The idea of a vacation home had always been a distant dream, a retirement fantasy, something we'd planned meticulously years down the line. Then, one evening, Clara brought it up, not as a question, but as an exciting revelation. She'd been looking at properties upstate. She chirped, a charming old farmhouse with incredible bones, perfect for a renovation. My architect's brain immediately lit up. This was my territory. This was where my passion and my partner's dream could truly converge. I imagined late-night discussions over blueprints, the shared thrill of creation. I saw us poring over samples, debating materials, building something together, brick by brick, beam by beam, a new foundation for our future. It was a vision of shared purpose. But that vision, so clear in my mind, began to blur almost immediately. The initial enthusiasm was ours, yes, but the execution quickly became theirs. Clara and Ben. Their conversation started quietly, hushed tones over coffee in the mornings before I left for the office. Then later, behind the closed door of my study, which Clara had optimistically designated as the project room. I'd sometimes catch snippets, exposed beams, lake view, open concept kitchen, and when I try to join in, Clara would wave me off with a dismissive, playful hand gesture. "Oh, darling, we're just brainstorming. You'd find it dreadfully boring. All the messy details before your grand vision can swoop in." Ben would offer an apologetic smile, a quick, "She's right, man, just rough ideas," and the conversation would drop, only to resume moments later, lower, like a secret. The exclusion became a relentless drip, a slow erosion of my sense of belonging. Dinner conversations would pivot around the project, but when I offered a suggestion, a logistical consideration, or an aesthetic query, I was met with blank stares, or Clara's patented, "You just don't understand the vision, Ethan. You're too stuck in blueprints." My blueprints, the very tools of my trade, suddenly became a symbol of my inadequacy. My precise questions were met with vague answers, or worse, with Clara's sighs of exasperation. Honestly, Ethan, you overthink everything. Can't you just let us have a bit of fun? Fun. It always came back to fun, as if my desire for clarity and involvement was a joyless burden. The loft, once a sanctuary, started to feel like a stage where I was merely a bystander, watching a play unfold that I was meant to be starring in. I'd find myself lingering outside the study door, my ear pressed against the cool wood, straining to hear. I felt ashamed of my own behavior, a respected architect reduced to eavesdropping in his own home. But the anxiety gnawed at me. My sleep became fractured, my mind racing through imagined scenarios, conjuring conversations I wasn't privy to. I started losing my appetite, the carefully prepared meals Clara laid out for us becoming bland, tasteless. A knot tightened in my stomach, a cold, hard stone that refused to dissolve. I saw Ben's car parked outside our building more and more often, sometimes late into the evenings after I'd returned from work, his silhouette visible through the frosted glass of the study door as he leaned over a table, Clara beside him. He would leave quickly when he heard my key in the lock, a mumbled excuse about an early morning meeting. It all felt like a choreography I hadn't learned, a silent dance performed just out of my sight. One particularly grueling week, I managed to wrap up a major commission ahead of schedule, feeling a fleeting sense of accomplishment. I walked into the loft, hoping to surprise Clara, perhaps suggest a spontaneous dinner out, a chance to reconnect. The loft was quiet. Too quiet. I found her phone on the kitchen counter, open to a text exchange with Ben. A quick, can't wait for our trip to look at the fixtures next week. My breath hitched. A trip? To look at fixtures? I wasn't aware of any trip. When I asked her about it that evening, her eyes widened innocently. Oh, that. Just a quick run up to the Catskills, darling. Nothing major. Ben knows this amazing supplier. You wouldn't want to spend your precious weekend in a dusty warehouse, would you? Her tone was light, dismissive. She pulled me into a hug, pressed a kiss to my cheek. Besides, it's a surprise. For you. We're planning something truly special. A surprise. That word, once filled with warmth and anticipation, began to curdle in my mind. It became a cloak for secrecy, a justification for exclusion. You're overthinking it, Ethan, she'd say, her voice laced with an edge of impatience. Why are you always so suspicious? Don't you trust me? Trust. The word hung in the air, heavy and accusing. I wanted to trust her desperately. I wanted to believe that her secrecy was just a playful, well-intentioned charade. But the cold logic of my architect's mind rebelled. Structure, precision, transparency. These were the tenets I lived by, the foundations of my designs, and now, they felt entirely absent from my own home, my own marriage. The next few weeks were a blur of work and gnawing suspicion. My focus at the office faltered. I made mistakes, small errors in calculations, missed deadlines, things that were anathema to me. My assistant, Sarah, a sharp, observant woman, gently inquired if everything was all right. I mumbled something about stress, about a demanding client. I couldn't articulate the growing chasm in my chest. The project room, once a beacon of shared aspiration, had become a chamber of secrets. They worked in there for hours, often late into the night. I heard the low murmur of their voices, the rustle of papers, occasionally a burst of shared laughter that felt like a physical blow. I tried to join them once, just to offer a fresh perspective. Clara met me at the door, blocking my entry, a tight smile on her face. Not yet, darling. Almost there. Don't spoil the surprise. Ben hovered behind her, a hesitant, almost guilty look in his eyes that quickly vanished when he caught my gaze. It was a practiced deflection, I realized later. A well-rehearsed dance. The breaking point arrived not with a bang, but with the quiet click of a hidden latch. One Tuesday, Clara informed me she was meeting a new client for a late dinner. Ben had suddenly developed a migraine. The loft was mine. I paced, the silence pressing in on me, amplifying the frantic beat of my own heart. I kept walking past the closed door of the project room, the magnetic pull of the unknown almost unbearable. My hand hovered over the doorknob. Don't spoil the surprise, Clara's voice echoed in my head. But what if the surprise was me? What if I was the one being surprised out of my own life? My hand twisted the knob. The door opened with a faint creak. The room was not as I expected. It wasn't a messy den of brainstorming. It was meticulously organized, almost clinical. A large drafting table dominated the center, covered not with loose sketches, but with a pristine, rolled-up blueprint, held in place by two heavy brass weights. My architect's eye immediately recognized the professional grade. This wasn't a fun project anymore. This was serious. This was my work. My hands, trembling slightly, reached for it. The paper unrolled with a soft sigh, revealing crisp, precise lines, notations in careful, clear script. It wasn't a vacation home. Not in the way I understood it. It was a new house. A complete house. A two-bedroom layout, smaller than our loft, but meticulously designed, every detail considered. There was a master suite, a guest bedroom, and then a curious detail. A study labeled Ben's office. My breath hitched. Ben's office. In our vacation home. My eyes scanned further, taking in the elevations, the landscaping plans. And then, the true horror unfolded, not in the lines of the house, but in the accompanying documents neatly clipped to the side. Travel itineraries, not for a family, not for two adults and their architect owner, but for Clara and Ben. Detailed schedules, flight numbers, hotel bookings, reservations for two. Dates spanning the next 2 years. A timeline, a life timeline, meticulously crafted, leading to the full occupation of this new home. And there, stark in its absence, was my name. Not once. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. My lungs constricted, air refusing to enter. The world around me felt suddenly distant, muffled, as if I were underwater. This wasn't a surprise renovation. This was a blueprint for a life I wasn't a part of. A life designed without me. A future stolen, painstakingly drafted and rendered. The silence of the room screamed. My fingers traced the cold, hard lines of the blueprint, feeling the weight of the paper, the undeniable reality of it. The master bedroom, designed for two. The kitchen, clearly not meant for my particular cooking habits. The meticulous planning, the utter disregard for me. It wasn't just an affair, though that pain was sharp and visceral. It was an erasure. They hadn't just betrayed my trust, they had carefully, methodically, mapped out my non-existence. The sheer audacity, the cold calculation, made my stomach churn. My vision blurred, not with tears, but with a profound, dizzying sense of disorientation. I felt like a ghost haunting my own life, invisible, unheard, systematically removed from the very foundations I had helped lay. I rolled the blueprint back up, my hands now steady, the initial shock replaced by a chilling clarity. The knot in my stomach tightened, but it wasn't fear anymore. It was a hard, cold resolve. The next few days passed in a strange, numb haze. I moved through my routine like an automaton. I ate. I worked. I nodded at Clara's cheerful inquiries about my day, her dismissive comments about the project. My mind was a whirlwind of pain and precise planning. I had never been one for impulsive acts. Every decision I made, personal or professional, was carefully considered, weighed, structured. This situation, devastating as it was, would be no different. I would approach it like a complex architectural problem. Identify the flaws, dismantle the unsound structure, and build anew. I decided on a dinner party. A final act, a precisely choreographed revelation. I chose a Friday evening. I told Clara it was a belated celebration for a major project I'd just landed, a large commission that had been in the works for months. Her eyes lit up. Wonderful, darling. Who should we invite? I feigned casualness. Just us. And Ben. I want to toast our closest friends, those who've truly supported us. Her smile faltered for a fraction of a second, a fleeting flicker of unease I almost missed. Ben, when I called him, sounded hesitant, but accepted. The stage was set. I spent the day before the dinner in the project room, the blueprint spread out on the drafting table. I studied every line, every detail, committing it to memory. I needed to be absolutely sure, absolutely precise. I needed to understand the full scope of their deception. I folded the blueprint with meticulous care, sliding it into a slim, dark portfolio, the kind I used for presenting final designs to my most important clients. The evening arrived. Clara, radiating an artificial brightness, had chosen one of her favorite elegant dresses. Ben, looking slightly nervous, arrived with a bottle of champagne. The loft, usually a haven of quiet warmth, felt charged, humming with an unspoken tension only I seemed to feel. I cooked a meal I knew they both loved, a rich, slow-braised lamb with rosemary and garlic, accompanied by roasted vegetables and a perfect reduction. I opened a fine bottle of Barolo. We sat at the polished dining table, the flickering candlelight casting long shadows, highlighting the careful placement of every utensil, every glass. The conversation started innocently enough. Work, current events, a shared laugh about a trivial mishap. Clara chatted animatedly. Ben offered his usual charming anecdotes, but I noticed the subtle glances they exchanged, the quick, almost imperceptible hand Clara placed on Ben's arm when he spoke, a gesture of intimacy that chilled me to the bone. I played my part, smiling, listening, observing. I felt a strange detachment, as if I were watching myself from above, a character in a play I had written. As the main course was cleared and dessert, a delicate lemon tart Clara adored, was served, I cleared my throat, the sound unnaturally loud in the quiet room. I wanted to thank you both. I began, my voice steady, betraying none of the earthquake raging within me. For everything. For being such an integral part of my life, Clara, and for your friendship, Ben. And also, for your dedication to the project. Clara smiled, a little too brightly. Oh, the vacation home. It's coming along, darling. Almost ready for your grand reveal. She looked at Ben, a conspiratorial glint in her eyes. Ben shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Yes, I continued, my gaze moving deliberately between them, holding each for a long, uncomfortable moment. The grand reveal. You know, I've always admired your ability to envision things, Clara. To take an abstract idea and shape it into something tangible. It's a talent we architects share, in a way. I paused, took a slow sip of wine. The air in the room seemed to thicken, pressing down on us. Clara's smile had tightened, frozen at the edges. Ben was tracing patterns on the tablecloth with his finger, his eyes fixed on the ceramic. I had a bit of an accidental reveal myself, recently. I said, my voice dropping slightly, becoming a low, resonant hum. I stumbled upon some of your work. Your designs for the project. Clara's hand, which had been reaching for her wine glass, froze midair. Her face, usually so expressive, went utterly blank. Ben's head snapped up, his eyes wide, startled. I reached beneath my chair, pulling out the slim portfolio. The quiet rustle of the leather against my suit trousers sounded deafening. I placed it gently on the table between us. I met Clara's gaze. Hers was a mixture of confusion and dawning horror. Ben's face was pale, his jaw clenched. I found this, I said, my voice still eerily calm, in the project room. It's an impressive piece of work, truly. The elevations are clean, the flow is logical. Sustainable materials, minimalist aesthetic. All very much in line with my own architectural philosophy, actually. My fingers unzipped the portfolio, revealing the rolled blueprint. I unfurled it slowly, deliberately, the crisp paper unfurling with a soft sigh, revealing the stark lines of their deception. It lay between us, a stark, undeniable testament. The two-bedroom layout, Ben's office, the travel itineraries for two. All of it. Clara gasped, a sharp, choked sound. Her eyes darted from the blueprint to Ben, then back to me, filled with a desperate, panicked plea. Ben, for his part, just stared at the table, his face a mask of defeat, all his usual charm evaporated. I leaned forward slightly, my hands resting on the edge of the table, flanking the blueprint. My gaze pierced Clara's, then Ben's. So, I said, my voice barely above a whisper, yet it felt like a shout, reverberating through the elegant dining room. My question, Clara, Ben, is this the new wing you've designed for our shared dream? Or is this the new life you've designed without me? The silence that followed was deafening, suffocating. Clara's face crumpled. Tears welled in her eyes, but they felt utterly hollow, theatrical. Ben finally looked up, his gaze meeting mine, and in his eyes, I saw not just guilt, but a profound shame. He tried to speak, but no words came out, only a choked sound. Clara began to sob, a performance of anguish that failed to move me. The precision of my discovery had crushed any hope of denial, any possibility of gaslighting their way out of it. The blueprint, my own language, had exposed their meticulously crafted lie. The structure they built, without me, collapsed under the weight of its own deceit. The evening ended as abruptly as the truth had shattered. Clara's attempts at explanation were a jumble of desperate excuses, apologies woven with self-pity, promises of change that rang utterly false. Ben just sat there, a ghost of his former self, offering no defense, no explanation, only silence. I felt nothing but a cold, weary resolve. There was no anger, not really. Just an overwhelming sense of profound loss, like watching a magnificent structure collapse into dust. The precise, ordered world I had built lay in ruins around me. My heart ached with a pain so deep it was almost physical, a searing void where trust and love had once resided. The betrayal wasn't just an emotional wound, it was an existential one. They had tried to erase me. The days that followed were a blur of grief and legalities. I left the loft that night, taking only a small bag, finding refuge in a quiet hotel. The initial emotional collapse was absolute. I cried until my eyes were swollen shut, until my body ached from the intensity of the grief. I paced the small hotel room, replaying every whispered conversation, every dismissive wave of Clara's hand, every fleeting look exchanged between her and Ben. The gaslighting, the manipulation, it all became sickeningly clear. I hadn't been paranoid. I had been systematically undermined. The realization brought a strange, liberating clarity through the pain. My instincts had been right. My precise, analytical mind, though clouded by love, had seen the cracks. Awakening came slowly, like the dawn after a long, dark night. The pain was still there, a constant companion, but beneath it, a tiny spark of something new began to flicker: self-respect. They had tried to write me out of my own story, but I wouldn't let them. I would reclaim my narrative. The first steps were hard, each one a struggle against the inertia of despair. I called a divorce lawyer, a friend who looked at me with genuine sympathy. We initiated the proceedings. I began the process of selling the loft, the physical manifestation of a life that no longer existed. It was painful, letting go of a space I had poured my heart and soul into, but it also felt like severing a cancerous limb necessary for survival. The loft sold quickly, a testament to its design, to my design. With the funds and a fierce, burning resolve, I embarked on a new chapter. I established my own independent architectural firm, one focused entirely on sustainable, minimalist designs. No more large, impersonal corporate projects. This was about integrity, about honesty, about creating spaces that truly reflected their purpose, that were transparent in their construction and their being. My pain, the gaping wound of betrayal, became the fuel for my creativity. I poured my anguish, my disillusionment, my newfound understanding of deceit into my work. I designed homes that breathed, that were open, that had no hidden corners, no secrets. Each line I drew was an act of healing, a rebuilding of my own fractured self-worth. It wasn't easy. There were days when the grief would ambush me, when the memories would cut deep. But slowly, painstakingly, I began to find solace in the integrity of my work. My small firm flourished. Clients responded to my passion, my commitment to authenticity. I wasn't just designing buildings. I was designing principles into existence. I learned to trust my own instincts again, to value my own precision, my own meticulousness. The quiet, methodical man I had always been was still there, but now he was tempered by resilience, by a strength forged in the crucible of betrayal. Sometimes, late at night in my new, smaller apartment, a space I had designed for myself, for one, reflecting a quiet confidence and self-sufficiency, I think of Clara and Ben. I heard through mutual acquaintances that their dream home project ran into unexpected difficulties, cost overruns, and eventually was never fully realized. Their shared life, built on a foundation of deceit, seemed to crumble under its own weight. I feel a pang, not of triumph, but of a quiet, profound sadness for what could have been. And then, I turned back to my own drawings, my own designs, my own honest work. The future, once a terrifying blank space, is now an open blueprint, waiting for me to fill it with structures of my own making, structures built on truth, clarity, and unwavering self-belief. The bitterness still lingers, a faint echo, but it is overshadowed now by the empowering truth of my own liberation, the quiet triumph of building anew.